What happens when a guarded doctor and a billionaire with a broken past collide in the most unexpected way? This emotional love story between Logan and Mia will take you through moments of pain, healing, and a kind of love that doesn't ask for perfection, only presence. If you're a fan of heartfelt romance, second chances, and characters who feel deeply human, you won't want to miss this. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. What part of this story moved you the most? Logan Pierce hadn't expected to spend his Friday night in the emergency room. In fact, he hadn't expected to bleed at all. But here he was, lying on a stiff gurney, pressing a makeshift compress against a deep gash along his side. His once crisp white dress shirt was now ruined, stained crimson and clinging to his skin. The wound burned, but the real sting came from his own frustration. He hadn't even been drinking. All he did was step in when some drunk idiot at the bar got too aggressive with a waitress. Logan wasn't one to stand by and do nothing, but in the chaos that followed, shouting, broken glass, a swing of a bottle, he ended up taking the hit. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath, adjusting his position on the gurney. The pristine, private ER suite he was placed in did little to ease his irritation. His driver had insisted on taking him straight to the hospital instead of back to his penthouse, and now Logan was stuck here, waiting for a doctor, cold and shirtless under fluorescent lights. Then, without warning, the privacy curtain slid open with a brisk swish. The room, moments before sterile and dull, suddenly shifted. The woman who stepped in was composed, professional, and striking. She wore a white coat over navy scrubs, a clipboard tucked under one arm. Her deep brown eyes locked onto his wound with laser focus, and a few strands of chestnut hair had slipped from the ponytail at the nape of her neck, framing her face in a way that was unintentionally perfect. "Mr. Pierce?" she asked, voice calm but commanding. "I'm Dr. Mia Clarkson. Let's take a look." Logan blinked, momentarily forgetting the ache in his ribs. He'd met beautiful women before, models, actresses, heiresses, but there was something entirely different about her. Something grounded, uninterested, untouchable. "You don't waste time with pleasantries, do you, Doc?" he said, trying for charm. "Not when a patient is bleeding on my table," she replied coolly, stepping closer and setting her clipboard down. "Shirt off." He raised an eyebrow, half amused, but complied. As he unbuttoned the ruined fabric, he caught a flicker in her expression, just a moment's hesitation as her eyes swept across his torso, taking in the old scars from years of boxing and the fresh gash that still oozed lightly. "It's not deep," she said after a quick assessment, pulling on gloves. "But it needs stitches." "Lucky me," Logan muttered, watching her with interest as she began cleaning the wound. "How many follow-ups will this require? Just wondering how often I get to see you again." She didn't look up. "Just one, and don't try to flirt your way into more appointments. I'm immune." Logan chuckled, wincing slightly as the antiseptic touched raw skin. "Ouch, that hurts more than the glass." "You did that to yourself," Mia replied, completely unfazed. He watched her closely, her steady hands, her unfaltering professionalism, the way she didn't fawn or soften just because of who he was. She was different. And for the first time in a long time, Logan Pierce felt something he wasn't used to: curiosity. "What happened?" she asked as she began stitching. "Some guy got aggressive with a waitress," he replied. "I stepped in." He didn't appreciate it. "That was reckless," she said without missing a beat. Logan shrugged. It was right. She glanced up, and for a brief second their eyes locked. There was something unreadable in her gaze, something strong, guarded. "Still reckless," she murmured. And just like that, Logan Pierce knew he wasn't walking out of this hospital with just a stitched-up side. Something else had just begun. 2 days later, Logan Pierce stood across the street from a bustling corner cafe, his hands buried in the pockets of his wool coat, collar turned up against the crisp wind. He wasn't the kind of man who waited. Not for deals, not for drivers, and certainly not for women. Yet here he was, watching the door like a man without control, and he hated feeling out of control. But then she appeared. Dr. Mia Clarkson stepped out of the cafe, coffee in hand, hair pulled up into a messy bun that somehow made her even more distracting. She wore a long coat, scarf tucked neatly under the collar, and her free hand held her phone as she spoke into it, completely unaware that someone was watching her like a storm waiting to break. Logan moved. He crossed the street in long, sure strides, stopping just as she ended her call. Her eyes lifted and froze. "Tell me you didn't track down my routine just to loiter out here looking smug," she said dryly, not missing a beat. Logan smirked. "Persistent, not smug." "Right." She took a slow sip of her coffee, studying him. "I should have guessed you'd be the type who thinks persistence guarantees results." "Doesn't guarantee it," Logan said, voice low and sure, "but it tends to get interesting reactions." She shook her head, the corners of her mouth twitching despite herself. "You really think this is going to work, don't you?" "I don't know what this is yet," he admitted, "but I know I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I walked out of that ER." Mia's face faltered, just for a moment. Then it was back, cool, unreadable. "I'm not interested in being part of some rich guy's distraction of the week," she said flatly. That hit harder than he expected. "Then it's a good thing that's not what I'm looking for," he replied. There was a long pause between them. The city noise melted around their silence, cars passing, the whoosh of wind against buildings, the faint rumble of conversation behind glass windows. Logan wasn't used to chasing. He didn't have to. But something about Mia Clarkson made him want to, not out of ego, out of instinct. "You have 10 minutes, she said suddenly, glancing at her watch. He blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me." She motioned toward a nearby bench. 10 minutes, that's all I'm giving you." He followed, surprised but not hesitating. They sat down side by side, neither of them relaxing. "What made you want to be a doctor?" he asked, turning slightly toward her. She raised an eyebrow. "That's your opening line? Would you prefer something shallow?" Mia studied him carefully before replying. "I like fixing things. People. I like knowing I made a tangible difference." He nodded slowly, filing that away. "You're good at it." She didn't thank him. She just stared ahead, lips tight, as if fighting her own thoughts. "And you?" she asked, eyes flicking to his. "What made you want to chase power and millions?" "I like control," he said without hesitation. "I like knowing that if something breaks, I have the resources to fix it, or make it disappear." "That sounds lonely," she said softly. Logan's jaw tensed. "It is." Mia looked at him, really looked, and for the first time something inside her shifted. "I don't have time for games," she said. "Neither do I." She stood. "Don't follow me." "I won't," he said, rising with her. "But I'll be here if you ever want me to." She walked away, and yet she didn't look back with annoyance. She looked back with something dangerously close to curiosity. Mia Clarkson hadn't meant to look back that day. She told herself it was instinct, a reflex, not curiosity. But deep down, she knew better. There was something about Logan Pierce that unnerved her, not in the way dangerous men did, but in the way honest men could. The kind who got under your skin, not because they pushed, but because they waited. And Logan was waiting. For the next week, she kept running into him, not coincidentally. He never said it aloud, but she knew he was orchestrating it. A carefully timed coffee left at the nurse's station with a sticky note that read, "Still not giving up." A text from an unknown number after a late-night shift. "I hope today didn't break you. If it did, I'll help you put it back together." She never responded, but she also never blocked him. Because despite her best efforts, the walls were cracking. Late one evening, after a grueling 12-hour shift, Mia stood in the hospital stairwell, forehead pressed against the cool concrete wall. She was exhausted, physically, emotionally, soul deep. Another patient she couldn't save, another family shattered. The weight never got lighter, she just got better at pretending it didn't crush her. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She knew who it was before she even checked. Logan, if you're still at the hospital, I'm outside. Just drive. No pressure, no expectations. Just drive. She stared at the message for a long moment, heart thudding. Mia had always prided herself on being composed, logical. She didn't let herself get swept up. But tonight, the idea of sitting in silence with someone who didn't demand anything, who just wanted to be there, was too tempting. 10 minutes later, she slipped into the passenger seat of his sleek black car. Logan didn't say a word. He simply started driving. The city fell away behind them, lights fading into shadows, noise turning to wind. They ended up at a quiet overlook on the edge of the city. Below, the skyline shimmered, the kind of view most people only saw in postcards. Logan parked, leaned back in his seat, and let out a slow breath. "You don't have to talk," he said gently. "I just wanted to give you room to breathe." Mia didn't respond right away. She stared out at the lights, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "I'm not used to this." "To what?" "Someone showing up without trying to take something in return." Logan turned his head toward her. "I'm not here to take anything, Mia. I'm here because I see you, and I think you're worth chasing." She closed her eyes. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you." The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was loaded, electric. Logan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. His hand settled lightly over hers. She didn't move. "I don't want to fix you," he said. "You're not broken. I just want to be beside you while you keep being exactly who you are." Mia opened her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't pull her hand back. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she stayed. And for Logan Pierce, that was everything. Logan Pierce didn't usually cook for anyone. He didn't have to. He had a private chef, a penthouse with a view that could silence anyone mid-sentence, and a lifestyle curated for efficiency, not intimacy. But tonight, he stood in his kitchen barefoot, sleeves rolled up, finishing the final touches on a simple but carefully prepared meal. There were no caterers, no reservations, no orchestration. Just him, his nerves, and a table for two. When Mia arrived, she looked hesitant, one hand still gripping her keys like she wasn't entirely convinced this wasn't a mistake. "This isn't a trap," he said from the kitchen island, trying to smile past the pulse pounding in his throat. "Depends on your definition," she replied, stepping inside slowly. Her eyes took in the sleek apartment, the glow of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, the soft jazz humming through the speakers. "I thought people like you reserved rooftops and wait lists." Logan shrugged. "People like me do, but people like me don't get second chances with women like you." She raised an eyebrow but didn't challenge it. Instead, she let him take her coat and sat at the table, her posture still tight, as if ready to run. Dinner was quiet at first. Logan let her lead, watching her closely. Mia asked him questions, casual at first, but her eyes gave away more. She was observing him, measuring him, looking for cracks. "Why me?" she asked finally, pushing her salad aside. "You could have anyone, Logan. Why keep chasing me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Because you don't care who I am, and because when I walked into that ER, you didn't see a millionaire. You saw a man bleeding. You didn't flinch. You challenged me. That hasn't happened in a long time." Mia looked down at her hands. "That scares me," she admitted softly. "Because I want to believe you, and wanting, that's dangerous for someone like me." Logan leaned in, elbows on the table. "Then be scared. So am I." She glanced up, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "You?" "I'm used to controlling everything in my life," he said. "This, us, doesn't come with a blueprint. You don't follow rules, I know, and that terrifies me." Mia's jaw tightened, her eyes glistening just slightly. "I've worked so hard to build something steady, something that doesn't depend on anyone else. The idea of letting someone in, of giving someone that kind of power over me, it feels like walking into fire. Logan nodded slowly. Then maybe we don't have to figure it all out tonight, but maybe we don't have to keep pretending it's not happening either. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was thick with truth, the kind that left no room for masks. Mia finally reached for her glass, took a sip, and whispered, "I don't want to lose myself." "You won't," Logan promised. "I'm not here to change who you are. I'm here because of who you are." She set the glass down with trembling fingers, her walls beginning to quiver under the weight of something real. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Let's see where this goes." Logan exhaled, a quiet, relieved smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, for the first time, they weren't dancing around the edge. They had stepped into the fire, together. Logan Pierce had grown familiar with the rhythm of Mia Clarkson's presence. Quiet, guarded, slow to trust, but deeply honest when she let herself be. After their dinner, something had shifted between them. She didn't flinch when he reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate to answer his messages. She still held back, but less, like a door cracked open just wide enough to let in the light. But that light didn't come without shadows. It happened on a Thursday. Logan had just wrapped a board meeting when his assistant buzzed in, voice cautious. "There's a man in the lobby, says his name is Thomas Clarkson. He claims to be Dr. Mia Clarkson's father." Logan froze. Mia had only mentioned her father once, in a low, distant voice laced with exhaustion. "We don't talk," she'd said. "He left a long time ago, left everything." That was all. No details, no blame, just an ache she carried in silence. Logan stood now in his office, staring through the glass at the skyline, heart thudding with unease. He didn't like surprises, and he especially didn't like anyone dragging Mia's pain into his world without permission. But curiosity and something sharper drove him down to the lobby. The man waiting wasn't what Logan expected. He was sharply dressed, his silver hair slicked back, a smug smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "You must be the millionaire," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "I'm Thomas, Mia's father." Logan didn't take the hand. "What do you want?" Thomas chuckled. "Straight to the point. I respect that. Look, I know my daughter. She's brilliant, yes, but fragile. You don't strike me as the type who plays long games, Mr. Pierce. Mia's life isn't something you can just stroll into and decorate with expensive dinners and rooftop promises." Logan's jaw tightened. "Mia is more resilient than you'll ever give her credit for, and she doesn't need you speaking for her." "Maybe not," Thomas said, voice softer now. "But I know the damage that can be done by someone who doesn't know how to stay. So I'm simply suggesting, if this is a temporary thrill for you, walk away before she believes otherwise." Logan didn't respond. He just turned and walked away. That night, Mia showed up at his door without warning. Her face was pale, her posture stiff. "He found you," she said, voice low. Logan stepped aside to let her in. "I didn't invite him." "I know," she murmured, eyes shining. "But he has a way of poisoning everything I touch." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "He's not wrong, Logan. I've built a life I can control. I know how to manage pain when it's mine. But letting you in? It makes it all unpredictable. He knows that." "So do I," Logan said gently. "But I'm not here to play games or tear apart what you've built. I'm here because I care, for real. And I'm not leaving just because someone from your past thinks I will." Mia stared at him, heart thudding. "I want to believe you." "Then let me show you," he said. "One day at a time." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. That night, as they sat in silence on his balcony, the city pulsing below, the past hung over them like smoke. But in the space between their hands, almost touching, there was still something unbroken, and Logan Pierce knew. Love wasn't just about connection, it was about choosing to stay, even when the ghosts came knocking. The days that followed were quieter, on the surface. Mia went to work, Logan ran his empire, and the city kept moving like it always did. but something unspoken hung between them. Since the night her father resurfaced, Mia hadn't walked away, but she hadn't exactly let Logan in either. She hovered somewhere in the space between distance and desire, and Logan, for all his confidence, found himself fighting not to misstep. It was Mia who broke the silence. She texted him late one night, "I'm still at the hospital. Do you want to see where I go when I'm not with you?" Logan's reply was immediate. "Send me the address." When he arrived, she met him at the back entrance, still in her scrubs, her hair pulled back, face exhausted, but undeniably beautiful. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. Mia didn't speak. She just nodded and led him inside. She gave him the tour she'd never offered anyone else, past the busy nurses' station, through the pediatric wing, down dim corridors where her world lived and breathed. She showed him the room where she'd once lost a child patient and cried in secret, the corner where she sat during overnight shifts just to close her eyes for 10 minutes. She showed him her world not in perfection but in pieces. "This is what I come back to every day," she said softly, standing in the staff lounge, wrapping her arms around herself. "This chaos, this pain, this pressure, it's where I feel most alive and most alone." Logan stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "I've seen 1,000 hospitals. I've written checks to half of them, but I've never actually understood what it feels like to stand inside one. Not like this." Mia looked at him then, really looked. "You always seem so in control, like nothing ever touches you." He let out a quiet laugh. "That's the point. Control is my armor." She tilted her head. "And now?" "Now." Logan stepped closer. "You're the only thing I can't control, and for some reason I don't want to." Mia's breath caught in her chest. She didn't step back this time. He reached for her, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering. "You don't have to hide this side of you, Mia. Not from me." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "You say that now, but you haven't seen me at my worst." "Then show me," he said gently. "I'm not here for your best. I'm here for all of it." She swallowed hard, emotion burning at the back of her throat. "I don't know how to do this." Logan leaned in, his voice low and steady. "Then let me figure it out with you." And for the first time in years, Mia let someone hold her without trying to prove she didn't need it. That night, she invited him into her apartment. It was small, neat, lived in. There were books stacked by the window, a worn coffee mug with her name etched on the side, and a framed photo of her and her mother before the world turned cold. Logan didn't comment. He just looked around like he was seeing something sacred. Mia stood by the door, arms crossed, suddenly nervous. "You okay?" "I'm more than okay," he said. "You let me in." She looked down, then back up. "Just don't give me a reason to regret it." "I won't," he promised. And in the silence that followed, something powerful shifted. Because she wasn't just letting him into her space, she was letting him into her life. Rain tapped against the windows of Mia's apartment like a steady rhythm, a quiet soundtrack to a night that had slowly dissolved into something more intimate than either of them had expected. Logan sat on the edge of her couch, sleeves rolled up, a glass of red wine untouched in his hand. Mia had changed into an oversized t-shirt and leggings, her hair down, her defenses noticeably softer. They had been talking for hours, about everything and nothing, childhood stories, regrets, music. Silences that used to feel tense now felt warm, filled with comfort and curiosity. At some point, Mia sat beside him, their legs brushing. She didn't move away. And when Logan reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, she leaned into his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You always seem so put together," she whispered, eyes fixed on his. "Like nothing ever really rattles you." Logan gave a quiet laugh. "You're rattling me right now." She smiled, slow and uncertain. "That's a dangerous thing to say." "I like danger," he said, voice low, "when it looks like you." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. Their lips met, soft, searching, and for a moment the world outside ceased to exist. It wasn't rushed or explosive, it was careful, like they were both afraid of breaking something that hadn't fully formed yet. When they pulled apart, Mia rested her forehead against his, eyes closed. "I didn't think I'd let anyone this close again," she murmured. "Especially not someone like you." Logan traced his thumb along her jaw. "Someone like me. Someone who could hurt me without meaning to." His expression tightened. "I'd never—" "I know," she cut in gently, "but that doesn't make the fear go away." They sat like that for another minute, close, quiet, almost safe, until Mia's phone buzzed sharply on the coffee table. The sound shattered the moment. She glanced at the screen and stiffened. "What is it?" Logan asked, already sensing the shift in the air. Her voice dropped. "It's him, my father." Logan's jaw clenched. "Do you want to answer?" She shook her head, but the warmth in her eyes had already faded, replaced by a flicker of something colder. "He never calls unless he wants something, and every time he does, I lose a little more of myself." Logan set his glass down. "Then block him. You owe him nothing." "It's not that simple," she said, standing, suddenly pacing. "He's not just a memory, he's a trigger. He knows how to say the right things to make me doubt myself. He always has." "Is that what you're doing now?" Logan asked, rising to his feet. "Doubting yourself? Or doubting me?" Her eyes snapped to his. "I don't know," she said honestly. "All of this, it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm standing on something I'm afraid will collapse." Logan stepped toward her. "Then let me carry some of the weight." "You say that like it's easy." "It's not," he said. "But neither is falling for someone who keeps pushing you away." Silence. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. "I'm scared," she finally said. "So am I," he replied. "But I'm still here." Mia stared at him, really stared, and something in her eyes cracked just a little, not enough to break, but enough to let him see that under all her fear, she wanted to stay. She didn't say another word, but she reached for his hand. The next morning came without sunlight. Gray clouds hung over the city like a warning, and Mia stood alone in her apartment, the hum of the coffee machine doing little to quiet her mind. Logan had left just after sunrise, after holding her for what felt like hours in silence. Not because they didn't want to speak, but because neither of them knew how to say what lingered between them. She stared down at her phone again, another missed call from her father, another voicemail she wouldn't listen to. It wasn't just his voice that haunted her. It was the echo of every time she'd let herself trust someone and been wrong. Logan wasn't like them, but the heart didn't always care about logic. It feared repetition, and right now fear was loud. Across town, Logan stood in his penthouse office, city lights blinking beyond the tall windows. He'd postponed 2 meetings, ignored 3 calls, and for the first time in years, he couldn't bring himself to care. His mind was elsewhere, on her. On that moment when she reached for his hand like it was the only thing tethering her to something real. But real things broke too, didn't they? His assistant knocked once and entered. "Logan, the investors from Zurich need a decision on the expansion. They're expecting you in the boardroom." Logan didn't move. "Tell them to wait." "Sir?" He finally turned around, voice low and firm. "I said wait." It hit him all at once. How much had changed. He used to make million-dollar decisions before breakfast, ruthless and untouchable. Now he was standing in a room full of power, but all he could think about was a woman who didn't care about any of it, and that terrified him, because for the first time he didn't want to be the man who chose business over something real. That evening, Mia opened her apartment door to find Logan standing in the hallway soaked from the rain. He looked tired, but determined. "You're supposed to be in Switzerland, or pitching something, or saving the world," she said, half a joke, half a plea for distance. He stepped inside anyway. "I was supposed to be a lot of things," he said, "but all I wanted today was to be here." She wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know if I can give you what you need, Logan. I don't need perfect, he said softly. I need you, with all your fears, with all your fire. You think you have to fight everything alone, but I'm not trying to save you, Mia. I just want to stand beside you while you keep saving yourself. Tears blurred her vision and she hated it. How easily he saw her. How easily he made her want. You deserve someone stable, someone uncomplicated. I've had uncomplicated, he said, stepping closer. It's never made me feel like this. She wanted to run, wanted to retreat into the safe places she'd built around herself, but this time she didn't. Instead, she reached for him, not just physically but emotionally, exposed, unprotected. I'm still scared, she whispered. He cupped her face gently, his voice barely a breath. Me too. They stood there, two people with too many scars and too much pride, realizing that love wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing the person who made the fear worth facing. And in that fragile, quiet moment, Mia finally chose him. Not because he was perfect, but because he stayed when he didn't have to. Time didn't stop after Mia Clarkson chose to stay. The city kept moving, the hospital halls remained chaotic, and Logan's empire didn't collapse because he stopped answering his phone. But something fundamental had shifted, between them, within them. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, steady, and no less life-changing. Mia had always thought healing came from solitude. That strength was measured in how well she endured alone. But each day she let Logan a little closer, whether it was falling asleep on his shoulder after a long shift or letting him see her cry after a patient didn't make it. She realized that healing could also look like softness, like presence, like someone silently placing a cup of coffee in your hand before you even realize you need it. Logan, for his part, had stopped trying to win her over. He wasn't chasing anymore, he was showing up, with patience, with quiet support, with a kind of devotion he'd never offered anyone before. He didn't try to fix her, he simply made space for her. And somehow that meant more than grand gestures ever could. But peace was still fragile. One night, after a particularly grueling trauma shift, Mia came home to find Logan in her kitchen, barefoot, rolling up his sleeves as he stirred pasta on the stove. The sight would have once startled her. Now it made her heart ache in ways she didn't have words for. He turned when he heard her enter. You look like you've been through war. I was, she said, dropping her bag with a tired smile. 12 hours, 5 codes, 1 miracle. He pulled out a chair for her, poured a glass of wine. You're still standing. Barely. You don't have to stand alone anymore, he said. Mia looked at him, really looked. His tie was loosened, his hair a little messy, and for once he didn't look like the man on the magazine covers. He just looked like hers. And in that quiet moment, she asked a question she hadn't let herself ask out loud until now. Why me, Logan? He didn't hesitate. Because when I'm with you, everything that used to matter, money, control, power, it all fades. You make me want to be better. Not for image, not for ego, for us. Her breath caught. I don't know how to be part of an us without losing myself. You won't, he said softly. But I can promise you this, I'll never ask you to shrink. She blinked back tears. You always say the right thing. No, he whispered, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. I say what's real. They didn't speak after that. He sat beside her while she ate in silence, their hands brushing occasionally, electricity still humming between them, but without the old tension. It was something new now, something sacred. And as she leaned her head against his shoulder that night, Mia felt something she hadn't in years, safe, not because she was hidden, not because she was guarded, but because she was seen and loved anyway. There were no proposals yet, no rings. But in that stillness, in that quiet decision to stay, a vow had already been made. One that didn't need words, only presence, only choice. The first snow of winter fell in gentle silence outside Mia's apartment window, frosting the city in soft white. The world had slowed just for a moment. Inside, candles flickered on the kitchen table, not planned or romantic in the conventional sense, but comforting, real. Logan stood at the stove, burning the toast for the third time, cursing under his breath while Mia watched from the doorway, arms folded, lips twitching with barely suppressed amusement. "Don't laugh," he warned, waving a wooden spoon like a threat. "I'm not laughing," she said, stepping forward. "I'm observing." "Uh-huh." She plucked the blackened slice from the toaster and dumped it into the trash. "You're many things, Pierce. But breakfast chef? Not one of them." He smirked, setting the pan aside and wiping his hands on a towel. "Maybe not, but I show up, right?" Mia looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "Yes, you do." That wasn't a small compliment. It was everything. She'd spent her whole life surrounded by people who left, people who didn't fight for her. But Logan had stayed, through fear, silence, messiness, and doubt. He hadn't tried to fix her. He just stood beside her and waited while she put herself back together. That morning they sat at the table, laughing over burnt toast and undercooked eggs. There were no grand speeches, no music swelling in the background. But somewhere between the laughter and the quiet sips of coffee, Logan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. Mia's breath caught. "You're not," she began, eyes wide. "Relax," he interrupted with a crooked smile. "There's no orchestra waiting outside, no helicopter, no champagne tower." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold ring, no diamond, just a thin, elegant band. Understated. Honest. "This isn't a proposal in the fairy tale sense," he said softly. "It's not about the dress or the wedding or the headlines. It's a question, a real one." He slid the box across the table. "Will you build something with me? Something imperfect, something strong, something ours." Mia stared at the ring for a long moment. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "What if I still have bad days? I'll be there. What if I push you away? I'll remind you I'm not going anywhere. What if I'm not ready to say yes yet?" Logan leaned back in his chair, calm and steady. "Then I'll wait, as long as it takes." Mia's fingers brushed the edge of the box. She didn't take the ring, not yet, but she didn't close it either. She reached for his hand instead, lacing her fingers with his. "I don't have the answer today," she said quietly, "but I want to keep asking the question, with you." Logan smiled. "That's all I need." And in that moment, with no ring on her finger, no vows spoken aloud, something more powerful was exchanged. A mutual choice, to try, to stay, to grow. Because real love doesn't demand perfection, it doesn't come wrapped in certainty, it comes in small moments of courage, when two people decide that even with the fear, even with the scars, they're better together than apart. Outside, the snow kept falling, and somewhere in that stillness, a future waited, undefined, unwritten, and entirely their own.